service on page 24 with Shalom Aleichem.
It's okay.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharetz, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bachem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu ni l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Melech, Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
We welcome you to Congregation Bnai Jeshurun to our Shabbat evening service. Whether you are joining us here in person in the Perlmutter Outdoor Chapel, whether you're joining us from your own homes or somewhere else, each time we come together, we are one sacred community. Each time we come again together in prayer, song, and community. On Shabbat, we pause. We end our week with a break between the chaos, a chance to breathe in the calm, discovering a sense of rest, acknowledging how we have grown and mourning what we have lost. On Shabbat, we gather, we exhale together, taking a collective moment as one community, finding comfort and joy embraced by this sacred congregation. On Shabbat, we wonder. We explore the mystery of creation, taking stock of how we engage with the awe-inspiring beauty of our world. So we welcome Shabbat, a sanctuary in time, a time to pause, to gather, and to wonder. And now we bring in the light of Shabbat, and we invite the parents of tomorrow morning's Benot Mitzvah to join us on the bima for candle lighting.
As we light these Shabbat candles, we link ourselves with the generations of our people who have kindled those holy flames. Time passes quickly, and we take this moment to pause and express our gratitude. We stand here as a family with humility and with love for this occasion, for one another, and for being part of this sacred community. As we participate in this age-old ritual, we embrace the moment as we move forward in the cycle of our lives. Yesterday, we held our daughters in our arms, and tomorrow they will be called to the Torah's Benot Mitzvah. These Shabbat candles remind us not only of the joy of this occasion, but they help us to see the light within one another and the strength that each of us possesses. Grateful for the precious gifts in our lives, we kindle the Sabbath lights. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. Amen. As we continue with Kabbalat Shabbat, I was thinking about this week's Torah portion. We'll hear more tomorrow morning from Talia and Sadie about Lech Lecha, about the story of Abraham and Sarah who go on a journey. And it occurred to me that every week here in this community and for everyone can be kind of like a journey in and of itself. And whether this week has felt like a long and winding road or whether it was a quick trip, we invite you to leave that at the door, to allow the melodies of Kabbalat Shabbat to lift your heart and open your soul, and to join with us as we embark on this weekend of Simcha for someone very important to us and for all of us. So we continue on page 13 with Shiru Ladonai, and we continue with Kabbalat Shabbat. Shiru Ladonai, shir chadash, shiru Ladonai, kol haaretz. Shiru Ladonai, barechu shemo, basru miyom liyom, Yeshuato. Shiru Ladonai, shir chadash, shiru Ladonai, kol haaretz. Shiru Ladonai, barechu shemo, basru miyom liyom, Yeshuato. ספרו בגויים כבודו, בכל העמים נפלאותיו, כי גדול אדוני מחולל מאוד, נורא הוא על כל אלוהים. כי כל אלוהים העמים נלילים באדוני, שמיים עשה, הוד וחדר לפניו, עוז ותפארת במקדשו. שירו לאדוני שיר חדש, שירו לאדוני כל הארץ. שירו לאדוני ברכו שמו, ובשרו מיום ליום ישועתו. שירו לאדוני שיר חדש, שירו לאדוני כל הארץ. שירו לאדוני ברכו שמו, ובשרו מיום ליום ישועתו. Turning ahead to page 20, we continue welcoming the Sabbath bride with Lecha Dodi. Lecha Dodi likrat kalai, yalalai, 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 Erev Shabbat Service. Yai, 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 Lecha Dodi likrat kalai, yalalai, 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 Erev Shabbat
שמור וזכור וציבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד. אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ולתפארת ולתהילה.
Lecha Dodi likrat kalai, yalalai, 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 Erev Shabbat Ekabelai. Yai, 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 Lecha Dodi likrat kalai, yalalai, 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 Erev Shabbat Ekabelai.
לקראת שבת לכו בני לך,
קדם משוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבות תפילה.
לך דודי לקראת קלה, יללה, 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 בני שבת, לקבלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, יללה, 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 בני שבת, לקבלה.
התעוררי, התעוררי, כי בא האורח ומאורי. אורי, אורי, שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה.
לך דודי לקראת קלה, יללה, 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 בני שבת, לקבלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, יללה, 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 בני שבת, לקבלה. בואי ושלום, עטרת פלה, גם בשמחה ובצולה, תוך אמונה עם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, יללה, 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 בני שבת, לקבלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, יללה, 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 בני שבת, לקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, יללה, 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 בני שבת, לקבלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, יללה, 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 בני שבת, לקבלה.
We'll continue with Chatzi Kaddish on page 145.
יתקדש ויתקדש שמי רבה, אמן. בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון ויומכון, ובחיי דכל בית ישראל. בגלה, בגלה, ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי דקדושה בריחו, לעילם מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, תמירן בעלמה, ואמרו amen.
Please rise for Baruchu.
Bye.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidbaro ma'ariv aravim, v'chokma poteach she'arim, u'bituna mishane itim, u'machalif et hazmanim, u'misader et hakochavim, b'mishmerotehem barakia kirtzono, borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or.
ומעביר יום ומביא לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו. אל חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, המעריב ערבים.
We read responsively on the next page. In each age we receive and transmit Torah. At each moment we are addressed by the world.
In each age we are challenged by our ancient teaching. At each moment we stand face to face with truth.
In each age we add our wisdom to that which has gone before. At each moment the knowing heart is filled with wonder.
In each age the children of Torah become its builders and seek to set the world firm on a foundation of truth. Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed.
Please be seated.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
On page 151, we worship the power that unites the universe, the promise of harmony for all.
Yet that oneness eludes our grasp as imperfection and evil abound.
Before our eyes there is a vision of perfection, order, and goodness.
There is evil enough to break the heart, and there is good enough to exalt the soul.
When will redemption come?
When we grant everyone what we claim for ourselves.
Long ago we escaped the tyranny of Egypt. Our people saw the power of the Most High.
We learned God's presence redeems time and event, so we celebrate this power that makes for freedom. משה ומרים זה אלינו
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim, ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha. Give us a place to rest, O God. Shelter us in the long, soft evening shadows of your truth, your true protection and safety. In your presence we find love and acceptance. Watch over us as we go forth, prepare for us as we return. Spread over us your shelter of peace, over all we love, over our Jerusalem and yours.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha. Shelter us beneath your wings, O Adonai. Guard us from all harmful things, O Adonai. Keep us safe throughout the night, till we wake with morning's light. Teach us, God, wrong from right. Amen. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim.
Shamru b'nei Yisrael et השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש. וביום השביעי שבת
Please rise for the blessings of the Amidah.
Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Koneh Hakol, V'Zocher Chasdei Avot V'Imahot, U'Mevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, L'ma'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah, Ata Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechaye hakol, Ata Rav lehoshia, Mechalkel chayim bechesed, Mechaye hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim ve'rofech olim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato lishenei afar. Micha mocha ba'al gevurot umidom elach. Melech memit umechayeh umatzmiach Yeshua. V'ne'eman ata lehachayot hakol. Baruch atah Adonai, Mechaye hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kadoshim b'chol yom yahalelucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh.
Please be seated. We take a moment at this point in our service to turn our thoughts to those who are in need of healing of the body or healing of the spirit, maybe of those who are in need of a little bit of extra hope or courage on this Shabbat. We're thinking of Menachem ben Aharon, Stanley Amsterdam, Cindy Baker, Daniel Bissino, Todd Foreman, Paige Foreman, Andrew Foreman, Ed Goldberg, Alan Tilley, Manfred Kahan, Brooke Karen, Elise Kimmel, Ivy Kirschenbaum, Rose Rothman, David Rothman, Arnie Salkin, Tammy Schwartzberg, Braden Silver, and Eliana Leora Bat Shoshana Leah. And if there are any of your loved ones who you're thinking of on this Shabbat, I'll invite you to share their name out loud or to hold them in your hearts at this point. Fred. Fred. Thank you. Terry. Baruch atah Adonai rofei hacholim. Blessed are you, Adonai, who heals the sick.
Rifa'enu Adonai v'nei rafei. Hoshi'enu v'nivasheya. El karov lechol korea v'ach karov l'leya yisho. Pray for healing of the body. We pray for healing of the soul, for strength of flesh and mind and spirit. We pray for once again behold, oh, please heal us now. Refuat ha'nefesh, refuat ha'guf, refuat shleima, heal us now. Heal us now. הושיע את עמך, וברך את נחלתך, וראה ונשאם עד העולם. מי שברך אבותינו, מי שברך אמותינו, אהנה אדוני הושיענה. Heal us now. Heal us
We turn from the healing of the body to the healing of our world, praying that one day our community and our world will live in an abundance of peace. Shalom Rav.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim כי אתה הוא מלך אדון לכל השלום. כי אתה הוא מלך אדון לכל השלום. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. תשים לעולם. תשים לעולם.
Go forth on a journey. Go by yourself, standing at a crossroads. You venture from the known to the unknown. Some journeys must be made alone. Go to yourself. Spiral inward and unwrap your past and your potential. Remember that the soul which you have made is unique and holy. Go for yourself. Smell the fragrance which spreads across the land as you roam and wander. Refresh yourself under the tree which grows by a spring at the side of the road. Make your name great and make your life a blessing. As we prepare for a few moments of that coveted time of silent prayer, I want to take a moment to reflect on this poem that was written by Rabbi Andrea Weiss in connection with our Torah reading this week, Lech Lecha, meaning go forth, speaking about the beginning of a journey. There are these certain moments in our calendar, in our Torah reading calendar specifically, that speak to us in various ways. And this week, serving as a prompt or a guide for each of us to consider our own journeys, where we come from, where we are, and where we go next. So as Cantor Fishbein began our service with, considering the journeys that each of us are on this week, prompted by our place in Torah, whether it's been a long one, or whether this week has flown by, whether it's a week of milestones or a week of ordinary, we take this moment to let that teaching of Torah guide us with the intention of making each and every day a blessing. Take a few moments to pray silently.
That piece that you just heard was once the coveted slot on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. If you were a kid and wanted to show your stuff at Erev Shabbat, you were chosen to sing that piece. Kenner Fishbein was one of those coveted students that got to sing that piece, and I'm looking at her dad, who's running after her child, and I remember being one of the rabbis at her bat mitzvah all these years, and here she is now co-officiating at my children's B'nai Mitzvah. It's quite a circle of life in the most meaningful of ways as my partners up here get to give back to our family what we try to give to all of you each and every week. Shabbat Shalom to all of you. It means everything for those of you who are at home, many of you there, and those of you here. It means everything that you continue to raise our family with us. It's been a partnership, and you've been nothing less than unbelievably generous in our 16 years here. It's extraordinary. So thank you. It is really interesting how it is that we make the best of friends in life. When I was on that Upper West Side about which I just spoke, as a very, very young rabbi, I was eager to lead my first trip to Israel. And as that was crossing my mind within those few days span, sure enough, the phone rang, and someone named Joel Rosenfeld picked up the phone or called on the other line and cold called me and said, "Are you interested in doing an Israel trip?" And I said, "Actually, I am." But I thought to myself, why this guy? And he mentioned the name Rabbi Norman Cohen, with whom he had played basketball years before. And that's all it took. Rabbi Norman Cohen was my Midrash professor. He became my thesis advisor and one of the more important academic mentors that I had in my life. The rest, I would say, is history. We have now finished, Joel and myself, doing 18 trips to Israel together. It took me a while to figure it all out. And Joel, it would have been 20 had the pandemic not hit, because we've now canceled 2, many of the chairs sitting here this evening. Joel Rosenfeld is currently at ISRAM, which is one of the major tour operators. He is officially head of marketing and sales, but titles don't really say much about people, because Joel is a lot more than a marketing manager. He is a master educator. He is one of the more innovative thinkers that I know, not just wise, not just bright, I should say, but incredibly wise. And what's happened over the years is we started off as colleagues doing work together and became incredibly cherished friends to each other, not just Joel and myself, but our families. He has 3 wonderful children who actually are adults now. Ayelet, Yaniv, who is a shaliach, an emissary here for a year. Some of you might remember, probably, I want to say 13 years ago at this point. And their youngest, Maayan, who has babysat for our kids. I would say some of the richest Shabbatot I've spent in my life, not just in Israel, but in my life. I've been in the Rosenfeld home on Friday nights. They are indeed very, very dear friends. So Joel, who is really looking to get out of Israel, not because he doesn't love Israel, but because he's been stuck like we've been stuck, has not, I don't want to rub it in, has not really had business in 20 months. So decided to come here on vacation. and also to be able to frame that around our daughter's Benot Mitzvah. Immediately, Lauren said, well, he should be our guest speaker. The congregation needs an update on Israel and needs an interesting and important spin on it. And I'll end by saying this. Not only do I personally and professionally, but more importantly personally, absolutely love Joel and his family, but he's one of the people in this world who continuously, as we're being pressured to make up facts in all kinds of ways, Joel always tells the truth. If you like it or not, he always tells the truth. So he's here to share truth about Israel. Joel, there are people on screen and also here who are big fans of yours, because we have now sent well over 500 people from this congregation to Israel under your tutelage. So it is my real privilege on this weekend of our privilege to invite up our very dear friend and also guest speaker, Joel Rosenfeld.
Wow. Not sure how I can follow up on that. I am so happy and honored to be here. Actually, what motivated me, as Matt said, was that my uncle and aunt are 91 and 87, still very independent in the city, and we do Zoom. Our family does a Zoom with them every Friday, kids, grandkids, and I just got tired of Zoom. And as Matt said, last time that I worked as a guide, worked at all, was 20 months ago. Had a group, an evangelical group, March 2020, March 13th, 2020 was the last day I guided. And when I say that, I'm talking about the entire industry, the entire incoming tourism industry. So after being in Israel for so long, and I'll talk a little bit about not working, I am really missing my aunt and uncle, and then thinking about Talia and Sadie's Benot Mitzvah, all sort of came together, an opportunity to come here. So I'm so happy and honored to be here, and I promise that I won't use the whole hour that Matt and Lauren said that I have were allotted for this talk. Right? Okay, hour and a half. That's even better. There are certain memories that I'm sure a lot of what we experienced in Israel, you all also experienced here. I mean, maybe we were a little bit ahead of the game, and certainly in terms of the vaccine, but I'm sure a lot of what you guys went through, we also went through. I'll just share just a couple of things that happened, certainly in the beginning of the pandemic. First of all, as I said, when I was guiding, and suddenly all these groups were leaving Israel that second week of March. And like the only upside of it, and nobody in our group, nobody of that group from Houston left, was that we didn't have to wait online at any site in Israel. That I do remember. But then, of course, they left, and that was the last time. In the 20 months, I've guided 2 days, both in Hebrew. One, our congregation, I'm involved in a Reformed congregation in Rosh Hashanah. So one day, guided a group of members of the congregation and in Jerusalem, and one day a group of doctors. Our doctor is the head of emergency medicine at Tel Shemer Hospital, and he decided to take his team also to Jerusalem, and I ended up guiding them for a day. It was great to guide again, but it's been a quiet spell. So just a couple of memories that I want to point out. First, when the country shut down and we weren't allowed to leave our homes and go out more than 200 meters, a couple hundred yards from your house. And this was right after Passover of 2020, and you couldn't have any family gatherings. Again, I'm sure that you guys probably had something similar. And we decided, Gail and I, my wife and I, that this was, we weren't gonna be able to hold up to this. Our kids were not seeing us. We were doing everything, on FaceTime stuff. So we have friends, Zamir and Ayala, who live more than a couple of hundred meters, but in our neighborhood from us. And so we decided that we would create our own capsule, Zamir and Ayala and Gail and I. And we went to their house, and it was kind of like, those of you who remember The Great Escape, like I'm talking about just trying to get to their house and thinking about it. Not that it was enforced, nothing was enforced, but we were worried about being caught. I'm not sure by whom. And we sat at angles. And then the following Shabbat, we reciprocated, and they came to us and we set the table. And every Friday, besides the Zoom that I talked about later on that we started doing with my aunt and uncle, we send out messages to our family. We have a WhatsApp group, and Gail and I poured a couple of drinks, and we did raised the toast. I'm so happy we did a selfie finally. Not that great with the selfies. We did a great selfie. We took the picture, and we'd already set the table for dinner for Zamir and Ayala and the two of us. So the table was set for 4, and we sent the Shabbat Shalom to our kids. And within seconds, the phone rings. Yaniv, our son, why are there 4 places at the table? And we explained that Zamir and Ayala were our family now. And over the next 18 months, the 4 of us gathered for I can't tell you how many Shabbatot. Eventually, the country, began opening up more and more, and then shutting down again. We went into lockdown in September. Now, again, I have, as Matt said, three grown children, all married. We have 5 grandchildren, 6th on the way, and it's fantastic. Lockdown comes in September of last year, and our daughter Ayelet says, they live in Haifa. Maybe we'll come down and stay with you. And so Ayelet and her husband Adi and their 2 kids, Shani and Amit. Shani then was 4, almost 4, and Amit was just one in a few months. So they came and lived with us for just over 3 weeks, and it was a joy, but it was also a joy when they left. And I tell them that, they know that. I do want to say, the country is open again. Israel's open. Gail and I go to theater. You have to show that you have a passport, a green passport that shows you've been vaccinated. We've all gotten the boosters as well. The whole country, everybody basically now is getting vaccinated. There are concerts. My daughter Mayan sent us a concert that she and her husband were at last night. Open air, something similar to what you're sitting in right now. A couple of weeks ago, my sister-in-law was visiting with us, and we took her to southern Tel Aviv to the Arts and Crafts Fair on Nachlat Binyamin Street, and it was as crowded as I've ever seen it. And the Carmel Market was packed. And so, I was so relieved. And people wearing masks, most of the people wearing masks, but again, it was all outdoors. And so part of my message tonight is to say that we're getting there. Slowly but surely in Israel, we're getting there. Of course, you all know, putting COVID aside, you all know that starting in from April 2019, we had 4 elections. And so that's certainly part of my memory of these last 20 months. And even before the pandemic, and I do want to say one thing, I'm only representing myself up here. So anything that I say that is in any way annoys anybody, I'm happy to chat with you afterwards, but I barely represent my own wife and kids. So please understand, representing nobody. I've been living in Israel for 37 years. I still have this accent in Hebrew, but and I was very happy. I really wanted Bibi to go because I don't think that a prime minister who had the cloud of corruption over him could stay prime minister, and certainly not after he was indicted. But by Israeli law, he could stay prime minister. And so Gail and I and our kids and grandkids would go out every Shabbat, every Saturday afternoon and into the evening, joining thousands of Israelis from as far south as Eilat to as far north as Metula, standing on the highways, standing at junctions, standing in the streets of the main cities of Israel, shouting Hon Shilton Olam Tachton, which is money and power equal the underworld. And in fact, I don't know if it's good to be as a grandparent. I'll see if it comes out. 1 second, stick with me. Let's see if this works. That's my granddaughter, Shani, who is 4 years old and got a lesson in civics. And she wasn't the only 4-year-old out there. People came out and miraculously, again, elections in April, of 2019, Netanyahu wanted to get to a majority government so that he could basically escape being tried. He didn't get a majority government. You need to have 61 seats to form a government, or 120 members of the Knesset. And so we had elections. He called elections again in September of 2019. Again, didn't get to a majority, but neither did the opposition. Another elections were held again just at the beginning of, as the pandemic is just beginning, in March of 2020. And once again, no majority on either side. And a tenuous government was formed with Benny Gantz of the Blue and White Party, and that crumbled. And there were a fourth round of elections in March 2021. And at that point, after Netanyahu failed, one of the things that he did do in trying to create a government was he started negotiating with Mansour Abbas, who's the head of the United Arab Party. And no Arab, for those of you who may not know this, no Arab party has ever served in an Israeli government. There have been Arab Knesset Arab members of the government because they were in one of the Jewish parties. But no Arab party has ever been part of the government. Netanyahu started negotiating quietly, and the people in his potential coalition on the right said, if they're in, we're out. And so he couldn't form a government. And lo and behold, the opposition, led by Yair Lapid and Naftali Bennett, were able to form a government. And they were formed. The new government was formed in June of 2021. And it's been amazing. Not a great government, doesn't hold to all the ideological things that anybody wants on the right or the left, but it's made up of parties from the left, it's made up of parties from the right, it's made up of, as I said, the Arab members, and there's no more of the vitriol, there's no more of the divisiveness, or is it divisiveness? There's no more of the hatred that so marked the Netanyahu years. So that was also certainly part of the experience of these last 20 months. I'm sure you all remember in May, there were the rocket attacks, thousands of rockets launched from Gaza into Israel. And this is an opportunity for me to say, even as someone standing on the left, that we are so grateful that there was Iron Dome. And anybody who says otherwise doesn't know what they're talking about. Iron Dome saved lives on both sides, saved lives for Israelis, Jewish and Arab, Palestinian Israelis, and it saved the lives of the Palestinians in Gaza who otherwise would have died had Israel attacked if there had not been Iron Dome. But it was a terribly stressful time, especially for the people living on the border with Gaza. And many of you who have been on Israel trips with Matt have gone down there and seen what it's like. You know, we live near Tel Aviv, and so we had, basically close to a minute to, get into the secure room. But people living on the Gaza border sometimes only a few seconds. The attacks, the rocket attacks, as awful as they were, and the terror and the fear that they created, were not an existential threat to the state of Israel. I don't know what the resolution is going to be in Gaza. We don't really have any kind of solution. One thing I can tell you for sure, there's no military solution. I wish that there were people on the other side whom we could talk to maybe get to a political solution, but that's something we can all pray for. Right after those attacks, or during those attacks, the Israeli police grossly mishandled the gathering of rioting on the Temple Mount, and that led to pogroms and really murderous rampages in mixed cities in Israel, and it was awful. It was an awful period, but I don't want to end on this kind of awful thing. I want to say that the bright thing that came out of that is a new Palestinian leadership that's trying to impact an Israeli society, and that, like Mansour Abbas in the government. And if you were in a hospital, in any hospital in Israel, you would be taken care of by Arab doctors, Arab Palestinian Israeli doctors, and Palestinian Israeli nurses. And there's a dialogue that's going on, a sense that the status quo can't continue. And so, as awful as it was, and 4 people died and many people were injured, there is a sense that something is changing, that the Palestinians who are Israeli citizens want a greater role in life in Israel, and Jewish Israel, that up until now has really mistrusted the Palestinian citizens. Many Jews are starting to realize that we've got to find a way to live together. Finally, I want to talk just about one thing that hasn't happened yet, but is about to happen. Next week, we'll be commemorating the 26th anniversary of the Rabin assassination, an event that literally changed history. And I hope Saturday night, I'll be back, going back on Sunday, this coming Sunday night, 2 days, that Saturday night I'll be in Rabin Square to commemorate that awful event. Last thing I just want to say about Lech Lecha, about the Torah portion. I grew up in a Reconstructionist home in Washington Heights, and was very involved in Young Judea. That's how I met Norman Cohen. And Lech Lecha, of all the Torah portions, really spoke to me. The idea that God speaks to Abram and says, go to this land, and I'm going to create a people. And to me, that's why I moved to Israel. I moved to Israel because my parents instilled in me this sense that I was part of this people. And if you're a part of a people, then you have to be in the land, and you have to speak the language, and you have to be part of that culture. And that's what brought me and my wife to Israel. Abram is transformed to Abraham, right? From Avram, he becomes Avraham. And I can say that I, too, personally, was transformed. And my last sort of Israel pitch to say to all of you, and certainly to Talia and Sadie and Jake and parents and grandparents who are here, that you should go, that you need to go to Israel. And I don't mean just going on a congregational trip. You need to go for extended periods of time. Matt and I discovered over time that we both had spent at different times of our lives extended period of time on Kibbutz Mayan Tzvi, just south of Haifa. You need to go to Israel. You need to see that it's not just everything you see in CNN or Times or Fox News. You need to meet the people to understand how complex it is. That, like I said, things are not black and white. And I promise that if you do that, if you spend some time in Israel meeting people, that you too will be transformed in your own way. So with that note, I say, first of all, Mazal Tov to you guys, and Shabbat Shalom.
And as someone who has also spent many good times with Joel, God willing, we should all be able to be in Israel together. We should say maybe this year, maybe next year in Jerusalem, meaning this year, that we should all be there together. So thank you, Joel, for those words. You transform me back there. We're going to begin to conclude our service. Returning to our prayer books, page 282, I invite you to rise for the words of Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'teit gedula liyotzer bereshit, shelo asanu kegoye ha'aratzot, velo samanu shpechot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, vegor aleinu echol hamonam, va'anachnu קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא ביום
At this point in our service, we come to the words of the mourner's Kaddish. These words honor the lives and the memories of those whom we have lost. If you hear the name of someone you are remembering, we invite you to rise in honor of their memory. At the conclusion of all of the names I'll share, we'll stand together as one sacred community to join in the words of Kaddish. In the period of Shloshim, the 30 days of mourning, we remember Eugene Lamazor, Gilbert Selvin, Louis F. Leone, Rena Marion, Arthur Whitehorn, Francis Schreibman, Louise Silberman, Rosalind Simmons, Julian Greenspan, Robert Kamens, Dr. Jan Mark Ornstein, and Linda Chalif Zafar. And on their anniversary of passing this Shabbat, their yahrzeit, we remember Selma F. Allen, Martin Bartner, Charlotte Dawn Bass, Beatrice Black, Louis Blitzman, Doris B. Bloom, Bella Moynihan Cohn, Sanford Feldman, Emmanuel Fishman, Samuel I. Garfinkel, Rose Popper Griswold, Elizabeth Guevara, Stanley L. Harris Sr., June Abelson Herman, Ida Hertzfeld, Hazel S. Horowitz, Milton Jacobstein, Rosalie Jacoby, Laura Lehman Koffer, Stanley Keller, Isidore Kiefer, Jacob Klein, Delitza Ramirez Christeller, Lynn K. Levy, Linda Lovinger Siegel, Maurice D. Marcuse, George M. Margolis, Frida Margolis, Doris P. Marks, Benjamin Mayer, Bertram A. Meyer, Yet Newman, Belva Plain, Annie Gans Popper, Anna J. Press, Milton K. Sachs, Sadie Scharf Saperstein, Mary Shack, Sophie Schwabacher, Hortense Krieger Schwartz, Arthur Schiffman, Sarah Solnitsky, Geraldine Spies, Selma Krohn Spatalny, Sylvia Sporn, William I. Tamor, Jack Stanley Wachtel, Bessie Wolf, Linda Zafar, Barbara Zucker-Zaret, and Mignon Zeifler. Zecher Tzadik Livracha, may each of their memories ever be for a blessing. Page 294, we rise together for words of Kaddish. Yit Gadal v'yit Gadash Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma divrach hirte v'yamlich malchute, V'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agalau v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah mevarach leolam olamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. Yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei barichu. Elam min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Daminram be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav. Huyaseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to people everywhere, as together we say, Amen. Please be seated. Friends, as the light is diminishing, I will just invite you to take a look at your orders of worship for upcoming events going on in our community. Of course, we want you to know there's an oneg individually wrapped, and you can share it here with friends or take it to go, and your clergy will be out to say hello and wish you a Shabbat Shalom. Tomorrow, of course, Torah study, 8:45, and that will be held in the Hoffman Library in person or on Zoom, wherever you are most comfortable. And with that, we are very excited to welcome tomorrow morning's Benot Mitzvah to join us on the pulpit, Talia Gewurtz and Sadie Gewurtz. They'll be making Shabbat evening Kiddush and Motzi. And as you come up, I will say that these Kiddush cups are gifts from our congregation's Women's Association and Brotherhood, and you'll hear it many times this weekend about how many of us have been able to watch you grow up. So it's very special to give you these Kiddush cups, our newest Kiddush cups, in fact, and for you to get to make Kiddush from them. We hope that the sweetness in this will last this day, this weekend, and all the days of your life, and that so many of us will get to be here to celebrate with you. So when you're ready, we're going to invite you. One more, Jilmy. Amen.
Asher kishanu mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kosho v'davar ratzon hinhilanu zikranu l'maaseh v'reishit ki hu yom tehillah l'mikra kodesh zeher l'tziat mitzrayim
Kivanu b'charta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodeshecha ve'ahava u'ratzon hinchaltanu.
Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lehem min haaretz.
Amen.
We come to a conclusion and we end our service with a prayer for peace. Peace here, peace there, and hopefully peace everywhere. If we keep singing about it, maybe one day it will be true. Please join us. Oh, say shalom. Say shalom, shalom, b'romav, yaseh shalom. Oh, say shalom, shalom, b'romav, yaseh shalom. Yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Oh, say shalom, shalom b'romav, yaseh shalom. Oh, say shalom, shalom b'romav, yaseh shalom.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.